What if I told you that right now, as you read this, America is deliberately undermining its relationship with the world's largest democracy to support a nation plagued by instability, terrorism, and economic chaos? What if the headlines you see about U.S.-India partnership are just a carefully crafted facade, hiding a much darker strategic game? This isn't speculation or conspiracy theory. This is cold, calculated geopolitical reality playing out in real time. Behind every diplomatic handshake, every trade agreement, every joint statement about shared democratic values, there's a shadow game being played where America consistently chooses Pakistan over India, despite everything logic would suggest. Today, I'm going to expose the real reasons behind America's Pakistan policy, reasons so deep and complex that once you understand them, you'll never look at international relations the same way again. From China's unstoppable rise to the military-industrial complex hunger for profits, from the psychology of controlled chaos to the weaponization of geographic positioning, this story reveals the naked truth about how power really works in our interconnected world. After reading this analysis, what do you think about America's Pakistan policy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm especially curious to hear how you think this affects your own country's position in this great game. The geographic goldmine, Pakistan's billion-dollar location. Let's start with something most people overlook when analyzing international politics: geography. Not just maps and borders, but what lies beneath the surface. You see, geography isn't just about location, it's about leverage, influence, and advantage. In this context, Pakistan's location is its most powerful asset, and it's no exaggeration to say that geography is one of the main reasons America openly supports Pakistan, even if it means ruffling feathers with India. American global strategy since World War II has always been about proximity to pressure points. It positions itself wherever it can monitor rivals and shape events. Pakistan sits right at the intersection of China, Afghanistan, Iran, and India, a geographic jackpot for any superpower wanting to keep its hands in the game. To the west of Pakistan lies Afghanistan, a country America invested 20 years and billions of dollars. In the U.S. withdrawal didn't erase those strategic interests. It just changed how they're managed. Now, with boots off the ground, America still needs intelligence, logistical access, and operational oversight in that region. Pakistan, whether willingly or through manipulation, offers that doorway. Let's not pretend this is charity. It's transactional. Pakistan gets aid, recognition, and arms. The U.S. gets positioning. To the north lies China, the biggest long-term threat to American global dominance. China's flagship Belt and Road Initiative runs straight through Pakistan in the form of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a $60+ billion investment connecting China to the Arabian Sea, giving it faster trade routes and military access. This scares Washington more than most people realize, and that fear creates opportunity. Supporting Pakistan gives America a front row seat to watch and possibly counter China's expansion. But here's where it gets psychologically interesting. You might ask, isn't India more powerful, more democratic, more aligned with Western values? Shouldn't America be backing India instead? On paper, yes. In theory, yes. But here's where psychology and politics collide. India, despite partnerships like the Quad and Tech agreements, refuses to be anyone's puppet. It's fiercely independent. It trades with Russia. It defends its own interests, even when they don't align with Washington's priorities. That's admirable, but inconvenient, especially for a country like the U.S., which is used to calling the shots. Pakistan, on the other hand, has historically played the game. It has military and intelligence cooperation with the U.S. that dates back decades. Even when the relationship breaks down, like during the Osama bin Laden raid, it always rebounds. Why? Because America knows Pakistan is indispensable when it comes to regional access. Its terrain, borders, ports, and political fragility make it easy to negotiate with influence or pressure. That's not a partnership based on values. It's a partnership based on utility. The India problem, when independence becomes a threat. Now let's shift perspectives. Superpowers don't operate with sentiment. They operate with risk calculation. The question is always, where do we have the most control? Supporting Pakistan gives the US a controllable, if unstable, ally. India, while valuable, is not controllable. It's confident, it's rising, and to some in the West, that confidence looks threatening. India's independence manifests in ways that make American strategists nervous. When the West imposed sanctions on Russia over Ukraine, India didn't just ignore them, it actually increased its oil imports from Russia. When America pushes for specific positions in international forums, India votes based on its own interests, not Washington's preferences. When the US offers military partnerships, India diversifies its suppliers instead of becoming dependent on American systems. This behavior represents something deeper than just policy disagreements. It represents a fundamental challenge to the post-Cold War order, where America expected to be the unquestioned leader and other countries were expected to follow. India's refusal to play this role isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially revolutionary because it shows other countries that independence is possible. The psychological dimension extends to how both sides interpret the same events. When America announces new initiatives with India, American officials interpret this as bringing India into the Western fold. When India announces the same partnerships, Indian officials interpret this as diversifying their relationships while maintaining strategic autonomy. Both interpretations can be simultaneously correct, which creates a situation where each side believes they're winning the same game. This fundamental mismatch in expectations creates ongoing tension beneath the surface of official cooperation. America wants India as a junior partner in containing China. India wants America as one of several partners in a multipolar world. America sees the relationship through the lens of alliance management. India sees it through the lens of strategic autonomy. These different frameworks make genuine long-term cooperation difficult because the underlying assumptions are incompatible. The generational aspect adds another layer of complexity. Older American policymakers remember when countries either aligned with Washington or Moscow during the Cold War. They expect clear choices and definitive commitments. But India represents a new model where countries can maintain relationships with multiple powers simultaneously without choosing sides definitively. This ambiguity makes American planners uncomfortable because it reduces their ability to predict and control outcomes. The Belt and Road Nightmare. China's master plan. If you really want to understand why America openly backs Pakistan despite India's obvious advantages, you need to examine this through the lens of long-game strategy, particularly regarding China. This isn't just about South Asia. This is about the global chessboard. And one of the biggest, boldest moves on that board is China's Belt and Road Initiative. Most people have heard the name, few actually understand the implications. At its core, the Belt and Road Initiative is China's vision for a new global order, an infrastructure and trade empire stretching across Asia into Europe, down into Africa, and touching the edges of Latin America. China is building not just physical routes, but influence networks, and one of the most strategic arteries of this initiative runs right through Pakistan. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor represents more than just trade infrastructure. It's a $60 billion investment linking China's western province of Xinjiang to the port city of Gwadar on Pakistan's Arabian Sea coastline. On the surface, it's a trade corridor. Underneath the infrastructure, there's something more: power projection. CPEC doesn't just give China economic access. It provides military flexibility, strategic positioning, and global visibility. This project opens the door for Chinese naval presence in the Arabian Sea, creates alternative energy routes that bypass US-monitored waters, and builds influence with governments and populations in key regions. All of this is happening in what America once considered its sphere of influence, right where Washington used to call the shots. The psychological impact of this shift cannot be overstated. Superpowers operate from a place of deep insecurity, even when they never show it. The moment another power starts building influence, relationships, and systems outside the Western framework, alarm bells start ringing. America doesn't just see CPEC as an infrastructure project. It sees it as a declaration from Beijing that says, we're not just participating in the global economy, we're leading it. So what does America do? It looks for pressure points, and one of the most accessible and historically pliable pressure points around CPEC is Pakistan. By openly supporting Pakistan through military funding, diplomatic gestures, and intelligence collaborations, the U.S. gains access, not full control, but influence. And influence is the currency of modern power. America doesn't need to own the corridor. It just needs to monitor it, shape it, stall it when necessary, or use Pakistan as a negotiating chip against China. Here's the deeper truth. It's not about Pakistan at all. It's about containing China. And Pakistan, due to its economic vulnerability and geographical position, becomes either a bridge or a barrier. America wants to make sure it's the latter. Military dependence, the invisible chains that bind. Let's talk about power. The kind that doesn't scream but whispers, the kind that hides in plain sight. I'm talking about military dependence, arms deals, and strategic loyalty. In this game, Pakistan's relationship with the United States isn't just about friendship, it's about control. Because when we step back and look at the global picture, we see the deeper reason why America keeps showing up for Pakistan, even when it contradicts logic, values, or partnerships with countries like India. Military dependence is one of the most effective tools of influence. It's not flashy, it's not emotional, it's transactional, and it works. India is a rising superpower, no doubt about it. It has one of the largest militaries in the world and is advancing in technology, space, and cyber defense. But here's what makes India different. It's diversifying. It doesn't want to be dependent on anyone, especially not the United States. India buys arms from Russia, from France, and develops its own. It has built a defense ecosystem designed to give it freedom, not favor. That kind of autonomy is powerful, but for the US, it's also inconvenient. America doesn't just want allies, it wants access, alignment, and most importantly, influence over how weapons are used, how decisions are made, and where military doctrine flows. That level of access is difficult with India because India guards its sovereignty fiercely. Pakistan presents a completely different dynamic. Here's a country that has been deeply tied into the US military-industrial complex for decades. From fighter jets to night vision, from training to tactical support, Pakistan's military infrastructure has been heavily shaped by American dollars, systems, and strategy. Even when diplomatic relations waver, even when trust is broken, those military ties remain intact. Why? Because dependence creates loyalty, and loyalty creates leverage. Pakistan needs the US not just for weapons, but for legitimacy. And that need becomes a powerful bargaining chip. It means Pakistan is more likely to comply, more likely to cooperate, and more likely to align with American interests when it matters most, especially in conflict zones or high-stakes diplomatic moves. Military support isn't just about defense, it's about economics. When a country depends on American arms, it also depends on American training, spare parts, upgrades, and intelligence systems. That dependency becomes multi-layered. It doesn't end when the jets are delivered. It begins for a superpower like the US. This becomes a long-term investment in control. The psychology of dependence changes behavior. Whether we're talking about individuals or nations, when you rely on someone for your security, you start adjusting your decisions to keep that relationship intact. You tolerate more, question less, and compromise faster. That's the hidden cost of military aid. It buys silence, loyalty, and often obedience. Pakistan plays this game strategically too. It knows its leverage. As long as it keeps its military tethered to US supply chains, It has a bargaining chip. It can trade intelligence, offer airspace, and promise access to regions where American boots are no longer welcome. This isn't passive diplomacy. It's calculated survival. The psychology of controlled chaos. Let's be brutally honest about something most analysts gloss over. Chaos is profitable, and not just profitable. It's strategic, especially in international politics. When you understand this truth, everything starts to make more sense about why America continues to support Pakistan despite its instability, why South Asia always feels one decision away from conflict, and why progress in the region often feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Instability serves the interests of the powerful. A stable, economically integrated, politically united South Asia is a nightmare scenario for anyone who thrives on influence and interference. The moment India rises unchallenged in its region, the need for external mediators, arms suppliers, and global facilitators disappears. The region stops being a battleground and becomes a marketplace, and that shift would force superpowers like the United States to step back, to become observers, rather than architects. The real fear is what happens if India begins to bring others with it. If its neighbors start aligning economically, politically, and culturally under India's influence, instead of the West's, that's the moment America loses its grip, not just on South Asia, but on the psychological and diplomatic leverage it's used for decades. So how do you prevent that from happening? You create or maintain just enough chaos, not war, not destruction, but tension, fear, and uncertainty. Enough to keep India distracted, to keep the region divided, to keep Pakistan in need, and to keep America relevant. It's not a conspiracy. It's a strategy that's been used repeatedly throughout history and across continents. Psychologically, it's the same principle you see in dysfunctional relationships. If someone fears they're losing influence, they'll stir drama, not because they enjoy it, but because it keeps them relevant, keeps the other person reacting instead of leading. That's what America's support for Pakistan achieves. It keeps India in response mode, always watching its borders, always preparing for conflicts that might come, always defending instead of building. Every time a crisis flares up, every time a border heats up, every time a diplomatic incident dominates headlines, ask yourself who benefits from this, who profits, who stays relevant. It's not just about defense, it's about dependence, and chaos, when managed correctly, keeps everyone looking outward instead of inward. It stalls self-reliance, delays unity, and for countries trying to rise together, that's fatal. The double standard diplomacy, performance versus reality. There's a hard truth most people don't want to hear. The gap between what America says publicly and what it does privately has become a masterclass in strategic deception. While international media focuses on dramatic summit meetings and public declarations of partnership, a quieter but equally significant dynamic is unfolding behind closed doors. Publicly, Pakistan is framed as a strategic partner, an essential player in regional security, a counterterrorism ally, and a country in need of support for the sake of stability. But behind closed doors, this alliance has less to do with shared values and more to do with quiet leverage, economic, military, and political. The real deals, the ones that shape influence, aren't broadcast on primetime news. They happen in briefings, closed-door intelligence exchanges, and defense negotiations where agendas are sealed, not signed in public. The public story is clean, sanitized, and framed around peace and diplomacy. But the private story is messier, because it's not about peace at all. It's about positioning. As long as the public believes Pakistan is essential, America's actions don't get questioned. Every arms deal looks like an investment in stability. Every intelligence partnership seems like a precaution against terrorism. But underneath that surface, there's a pattern that's much harder to ignore. These moves repeatedly undermine India's growth, its image, and its influence. This tactic of saying one thing and doing another isn't new. America, as a global brand, understands the power of narrative control better than anyone. It projects a clean, values-driven front to the public while operating with cold, strategic precision behind the scenes. India doesn't play this game the same way. India speaks more directly, its policies are more transparent, and it doesn't bend its values to fit Western narratives. That kind of authenticity makes the powers that be uneasy. So what happens? India gets praised publicly, but left out of key decisions. Pakistan gets criticized in headlines, but supported in contracts, and the people on both sides are fed carefully curated versions of the truth. This isn't just strategy. It's psychological manipulation. At the international level, you tell one audience one thing, you do something entirely different, and by the time anyone notices the disconnect, the deal's already done. The truth becomes performance. Trust disappears. And when trust disappears, the cost isn't just diplomatic. It's spiritual. Nations, like people, need authenticity to thrive. They need clarity, honesty, and accountability. Without it, they start to decay from within, not because of foreign threats, but because of internal disillusionment. The rising power dilemma, when independence challenges order. For decades, America functioned as the global center of gravity. It dictated trade, set the rules, controlled narratives, and brokered peace when it felt like it. For the most part, countries complied either out of fear, dependence, or hope of favor. But today, we're seeing a rebalancing, and India sits right at the center of that shift. India isn't playing the game the way Washington expected. It doesn't just nod along anymore. It doesn't cave under pressure, whether it's choosing to buy oil from Russia during sanctions, refusing to take sides in great power conflicts, or investing in its own tech and defense ecosystems. India is moving like a country that doesn't need permission. And that, right there, is what makes the US uncomfortable. Rising powers who operate independently are hard to manage, hard to predict, and hard to influence. For a superpower like America, that's dangerous because it means there's another voice at the table that isn't echoing yours. Worse, other countries are starting to listen to that voice. India is no longer just rising. It's challenging quietly, confidently, and philosophically. The American identity is built on leadership, not just economic or military leadership, but ideological leadership. The idea that its values, its systems, and its way of doing things should be the global default. But India doesn't buy into that fully. It's democratic, yes, but it's not Western. It's rooted in its own history, its own civilizational thinking, and its own priorities. It's not afraid to walk a path that diverges from the West, especially when it believes it's in its long-term interest. That kind of self-authorship, the courage to define your path without waiting for approval, is rare in global politics. America doesn't know how to respond to it, so it returns to strategies that worked in the past. It invests in the weaker player, the more dependent player, the one it can still influence. That player is Pakistan. Not because Pakistan is a stronger ally, but because it's a counterweight, a tool, a way to remind India that America still holds strings that matter. The strategy is short-sighted because history teaches us that the more you resist inevitable change, the faster it comes. Trying to contain India's rise by supporting Pakistan is like trying to stop the tide with a sandcastle. It might buy you time, but it won't stop the wave. India isn't asking for approval, it's earning respect, and that's exactly what makes it a threat to those still clinging to control. Conclusion: the naked truth about power. What we've uncovered today isn't just about America, Pakistan, or India. We've exposed fundamental principles about how power really works in our complex, interconnected world. We've seen how strategic thinking, patient maneuvering, and psychological sophistication can shape international relations in ways that most people never see or understand. America's support for Pakistan reveals the naked truth about international relations. Big powers don't choose friends based on values, democracy, or moral alignment. They choose positions based on strategic utility, geographic advantage, and their ability to maintain control over global systems. Pakistan gets American support not because it's a better ally than India, but because it's a more useful tool in America's broader strategy to contain China, manage South Asian dynamics, and preserve its global influence. The implications of this analysis extend far beyond South Asia. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in how global power operates, where traditional alliance structures are being challenged by rising powers that refuse to accept subordinate roles. India's independent approach represents a new model of international relations, where countries can maintain strategic autonomy while engaging with multiple powers simultaneously. This creates a dilemma for established powers like America. The old model of clear alliance structures and hierarchical relationships is breaking down, replaced by a more fluid, multipolar system where influence must be constantly earned rather than simply assumed. In this new environment, America's reliance on tools like Pakistan becomes both more necessary and less effective over time.
The economic dimensions of this shift are equally significant. As global trade patterns evolve and new economic corridors emerge, geographic advantages become more important than ever. Pakistan's location at the intersection of multiple regions makes it valuable regardless of its internal stability or democratic credentials. This reality forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how geography, economics, and strategic positioning matter more than values in international relations.
For students of international relations, business leaders, and anyone trying to understand how power really works in the modern world, the lessons from this analysis are profound. Success in complex, competitive environments often requires understanding not just what people say they want, but what they actually need strategically. It requires recognizing that publicly stated values and privately pursued interests don't always align, and that sustainable influence comes from making yourself indispensable rather than simply dominant. The future of South Asian geopolitics will largely depend on how these dynamics evolve. As India continues to rise and assert its independence, as China expands its influence through projects like CPEC, and as America adjusts its strategies to maintain relevance, the region will become an increasingly important theater for global power competition. Pakistan's role in this drama will continue to be significant, not because of its strength, but because of its strategic utility to powers that see it as a means to their larger ends. Understanding these realities doesn't mean accepting them as inevitable or desirable. It means recognizing them as the current state of international relations so that we can work towards systems that better serve human flourishing rather than simply preserving existing power structures. The first step toward change is always understanding how things really work, even when that understanding challenges our preferred narratives about how we wish they worked. This is the essence of strategic thinking in our interconnected world, the ability to see beyond surface narratives, to understand the deeper currents that really shape events. Whether you're analyzing international relations, building a business, or navigating any complex competitive environment, these principles apply. Power flows not to those who deserve it most, but to those who understand how to position themselves strategically within larger systems. The America-Pakistan relationship is ultimately a case study in how strategic positioning can trump moral clarity, how geographic advantages can outweigh democratic values, and how the pursuit of influence can shape alliances in ways that defy conventional expectations. These are uncomfortable truths, but they are truths nonetheless, and understanding them is essential for anyone who wants to navigate successfully in our complex, interconnected world.